Let's get some word of wisdom, shall we, on this from Patrick Young, Executive Director of the investment consultancy DV Advisors. Hi there, Patrick. Good evening to you in Belfast tonight. I see now it's not the first time Greece has proven to be an unreliable borrower. Why is there even discussion, therefore, about why it should be forgiven yet again?
Well, I think the only reason we can be having any discussion at this juncture is simply because there are obviously lots of people involved, and those are the citizens of Greece who are finding themselves in an absolutely appalling economic strait. We all have to sympathise with that. It's a huge problem, but ultimately Greece has not done anything to really help itself. It's missed every possible deadline it's been given, and now it's come back with its begging bowl, still looking for more money, more time, more possibilities, and really, well, it's like dealing with a dodgy builder. They're always promising you a wonderful new house, but there never seems to be any progress.
As you're saying, end of the day, the real issue here, the real tragedy is the people that are suffering. They are suffering, and yet they're still hearing on the same breath that not enough is being done. It must be very painful for them to hear it. At the end of the day, were those initial deadlines, those targets set, just never achievable?
Oh, absolutely. Unfortunately, I hate being right about this because I've been saying for this for, well, goodness gracious, I mean, a year, 2 years now. All of these targets were never achievable for Greece. Greece should have left the euro. Immediately it became clear that actually it had forged its membership application because it made up the numbers in order to get in the first place. And now what's ended up is we have an absolute tragedy, a situation where the people are suffering in the streets, where you have unemployment cycling and collapsing out of control. And as I've been saying all along, unfortunately, Greece must reach the euro, must exit the euro. Greece must exit the euro. We have reached a point where we are at the end of this Greek odyssey. Greece needs to go back to some form of its own currency. It's still going to be very painful, particularly because they've waited so long, but there's absolutely no way that Greece can get their economy back on track by simply cutting off arteries left, right and centre.
So what about these latest comments from Greece's Prime Minister expecting Greece to make a, quote, spectacular comeback? How is that possible?
Well, unfortunately, he does sound rather like a sort of a third division football match just after he's been beaten by sort of Dynamo Kiev or something, doesn't he? I mean, it's really rather sad, this whole situation. I mean, the Greek political class are utterly delusional if they believe that they can possibly manage to make the numbers add up. The numbers simply don't add up. They have not added up in Greece for perhaps 2 decades, probably a great deal longer. Ultimately, there is a fiction prize to be won from Greek economic numbers. The idea that suddenly, when you have an economy that's in a tailspin, that's collapsing at an incredible, almost unprecedented rate, that suddenly everything's going to switch around is really not going to happen.
And let's look at the German side of it here. Germany's Chancellor Merkel's now caught, of course, between the prospect on one end of Greece going bankrupt and on the other the pressure at home with even now one of her top voices in her own party saying a Greek exit wouldn't have a great impact after everything we heard before. Which way is she going to lean then?
Well, I think the situation for Mrs. Merkel, who has got a terrible dilemma, is she's actually going to have to do something radical that she hasn't done before in the euro crisis, which is make a decision. And actually, had she made any decisions a couple of years ago, it would have been a lot better than the elastoplasts, the sticking plasters that have been applied to this euro crisis. The truth is, there's no messing around here. Greece is bankrupt. Full stop, game over. Unfortunately, that's a terrible situation. Mrs. Merkel must agree with her backbenchers. She has to eject Greece from the euro because tragically it's the only humane solution for everybody involved.
Well, actually, while you're talking and looking at 2 of the key players over your shoulder, Merkel and the French president as well. They've gone again. But anyway, now the economic reality in Greece is, as you've just said, dire. So what is going to trigger this, what looks like an eventual leaving of the Eurozone? What's going to trigger it? It's been talked about so much. What's it going to depend on?
Well, I think finally we are actually reaching a sort of a crushing point where really everybody has become quite fed up with Greece. I mean, even a lot of people who are traditionally not just Europhiles, but passionately obsessed with holding Europe together have started to realise that actually the glue is coming unstuck from this alliance. Ultimately, the Greeks haven't held up to their side of the deal, and something needs to be done. The terrible problem we have here is that actually we've already got escalation. We've got Spain potentially looking at a bailout. And actually, because of the appalling vacillation and the complete lack of leadership amongst the EU political classes, it may actually be that it's too late to isolate the euro crisis, even when Greece does go bankrupt, which I expect must be within the next month or so.
Patrick Young from DV Investment Advisors, thank you.
Welcome.